Recording?
Yeah, it says it's live, I guess.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Angel of Objectivism, Arcean, talking to you. And guess what? I have my Yeti mic plugged in, and it's not working. So if I sound like shit, fuck you. By the way, I'm a very nice person in real life, in case you're wondering. So today, Druid is co-hosting with me.
Yep.
This is the Microwave Extravaganza podcast, episode number 3. Is that really my voice?
Yes.
In the background, yeah.
That squeaking noise?
Yeah, like it's the background noise of what should I refer you as? Because I think it's gonna be a mouthful to just say broken.
Arcean.
Broken's fine. I mean, yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm being anonymous, so.
Okay.
However, you can say liberal.
I'm gonna call you Heart.
Sure.
Asian.
All right. Yeah, most of it is just background music from background sound from Heart, because like I'm talking and I kind of hear a little bit of myself in his microphone.
Okay, so.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. Actually, you're the first newer guest that we've had that doesn't seem to be from the alt-right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm sort of old school liberal, I guess, is the way to describe me.
Mm-hmm. One of the classical liberals, I guess.
Well, not so much. Well, depends on what you mean by classical liberal, but I'm more like, I guess the closest I would say is like a old era Clinton Democrat. But I mean, granted, like, you know, with a little fucking Express and all that other stuff that, you know. I don't really like naming myself a Clinton Democrat anymore, but the Lolita Express and all those sort of allegations and stuff that came out, and it's just like, well, you know, maybe it's not best to, you know, label myself that anymore.
Monica, you do such a good job. I gotta hire you again.
Wow, pretty much.
Yeah. So one of the things, did you see the recent? There was I recently saw a live stream being done. Can you mute that in the background? It's starting to get in the way.
Who?
The extra noise in the background.
The echo, if it's possible.
Oh, me?
Yeah, there is an echo. I think it's like, what speakers are you using?
Here, I got headphone voice. There we go.
All right, testing. All right, yeah, better.
Well, we need to do the correct test. This is the best audio test. Yo, what's up? I'm on the.
We're doing testing during stream instead of before the stream, like we've been doing.
Very professional stream. Now, did you see there was a live stream that was done with James Alsop on his channel, hosting for Baked Alaska, and they were talking between Chris Cantwell, who was acting kind of like a cockhole, to another guy called RC something or another. And it was about this whole idea that they're going to get as many white people as they can to go to some place where there's mostly white people and secede from the Union. Did you hear about all that?
I mean, no, I didn't hear about this. I mean, but good luck. I mean, the thing is, like, you know, what was it, like, how many states tried to secede last time?
Like 9
well,
at the same time.
But hey, you know, you want to go try for it, go for it.
Yeah, but I mean, it got really, really, really weird in that Chris was constantly straw manning RC, and it got to the point where I started to really get annoyed. And the biggest reason I got annoyed is because James seemed to be almost like protecting his own, in that he was, trying to like cover for Chris, despite the fact that 90% of what Chris was saying was people like you are not intelligent enough to understand my position, shit like that. And it makes you.
Who's RC? I'm not sure who RC is though.
I don't remember his his last name, but he goes by the name RC followed by his last name or whatever. You know what I mean? Now, maybe I should just fill you in. He's basically he's a black conservative who was kind of questioning the whole identitarian alt-right-ish kind of movement, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he was trying to say, look, there are definitely problems in the black community and in with the immigration stuff, but his position was the ethno-state is kind of a fantasy, a bit of LARPing. And
so he's like a traditional conservative, not like a what do you call it, like somebody who wants to also have their own ethno-state or whatnot, essentially.
Yeah, basically. And I just started to wonder, I then compared it to another video by James Alsop where he starts to talk about how democracy doesn't work. And the interesting thing was he wasn't talking about what most people who are in the political sphere refer to when they refer to democracy. He immediately started to argue about, how classical democracy, which would mean that you wouldn't just vote for leaders, you would also vote on every single issue, how that's bad. And then he went to go ahead.
He's strawmanning basically 100% direct democracy. Take it to the side of the kind of thing.
Your voice sounds sorry, man. It's just that your voice sounds a little muffled. But I do want to hear you.
He was basically strawmanning direct democracy, not like what we have here, which is representative democracy. He's so because we don't vote on every single issue or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, one of his arguments was that if you vote for politicians that he doesn't find favorable, which I can understand. There are politicians who generally scummy things, that somehow democracy becomes two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. Well, when you think about it, isn't the point of a constitution to tell people that, that not everything needs to be voted on in the first place? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, because the thing is, you're not in direct democracy, you can have, vote for, hey, let's go, this person goes and gets executed or something like that. That's not what we have. We have a constitution. We have something that provides a framework, so people have their rights, basically. Well, he's basically it's strawmanning of the U.S. The U.S. is not a direct democracy.
Yeah, Drew, do you want to hop in on that?
You know more about that stream than I do, so I'm letting you talk. But yeah, just go on.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I understand that definitely there is such thing as the tyranny of the majority. I absolutely believe that you should be very careful because there's been plenty of times where I know everyone says, hey, if we all vote for X, we can have X given us at the expense of smaller minority Y. I can understand that too. So I'm just going to unplug my Yeti because at this point it's not doing anything. So there you go. It's pretty much. I dropped this thing a few weeks ago and now I'm kind of scared.
They're pretty durable. Anyways.
Oh, thank God. Yeah. But the thing is what I really think, and I do want to hear what you have to say because I think it sounds like you got something to say. What I think is very interesting is that he kind of ignores the other side, which is that if you have, let's say, Wife with a Purpose, also known as Ayla, who was on this stream actually, said something, and I'm not saying she's not dumb. She's not dumb by any stretch of the imagination. I don't want to pretend that she is. But she said she would rather have kind of a technocracy where the people who are the most qualified into office. And my response to that is, well, everyone you put in that office is a human being with greed and selfish desires. And if you have no immediate recourse, if they start hurting people, well, who's to say that these people won't just tell you, hey, even though I'm infringing on your human rights, I'm doing it because I'm doing what's good for you. I'm helping you. And they won't try to use the same things that communism uses, which are appeals to the idea that this is good for you to take away rights from you. You know what I mean? If you don't have democracy.
So you're saying that a technocracy would, basically you're saying a technocracy without a constitution, essentially.
Yeah, and not only that, without electing leaders. You take away the election of leaders into office, and you simply say, like a party, when instead a party of whom is made up of people you don't vote for, that party would go ahead and vote in the leaders. It'd be like if you took if like Parliament were to vote in every leader.
Well, that's essentially an aristocracy. That's not. I wouldn't. I mean, at least as far as what I would term a technocracy, that doesn't sound like it. It sounds more like a straight up unelected aristocracy, where like, oh, we're the experts and therefore you have to do what we say because we're the experts.
Yeah, I bet Mr. Medicare would get on that pretty fast.
It just sounds incestuous in the sense of like it's just in perpetuated. It just, that doesn't sound good at all. No.
Yeah. Well. I mean,
it like a technocracy in the sense that like you know, like we want, you know, these people are the most qualified. Hey, we should probably listen to them. They're probably right and stuff like that. Sure, that's a good attitude to have. Yeah, sure, but not like, oh, they're unelected and they have all the power as well. That just, again, what's the difference than an aristocracy?
Yeah. Well, what do you consider a technocracy exactly? Like, how do we decide?
I mean, the way people you were saying is like the most qualified people or whatever are leading and stuff like that. That sounds fine in the sense that like that's the attitude, but not like they're given undue like sort of, I guess, quote, undue power, I guess would be the byword or whatever.
Oh, right. But I'm saying, you know, obviously, who would decide how they get in? That's the point, you know, because like, you know, if you don't have, if you have a voting, and you say you have to go to whoever's most qualified, well, people are just, well, how is that any different from like a regular direct election? So in order to have a technocracy, I would think that you would have to have other people who are qualified to speak on the issue, qualify those people. And
yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, you definitely want people voting and stuff like that because you still need, you know, the people still need a voice. You just, I mean, to an extent, you know, like people, to an extent, be more because I mean, okay, so like right now, like with the president, like he appoints all of these people and stuff like that. But I mean, like some of them are political choices, some of them are, you know, payoffs and stuff like that. And you know, this senator supported me, you know, early on, blah 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 blah, and it's just like, well, maybe they're not the best person for like labor or, you know, Secretary of State, you know, something along those lines. So I mean, it's more along the lines of like, an attitude of are these people qualified for those positions instead of, hey, you know, this senator gave me support early on or something like that. That's.
Oh yeah. I'm saying the attitude should definitely be, you know, like, you know, is this person the best, you know, for the job? But that should be, you know, the idea that the people who are voting should have. When you think about it, if you see what James also was constantly saying is that, you know, that you'd have to have a lot of restrictions on people's right to vote for their leaders. If you go down the logical path, that essentially means he's anti the idea of people being in charge of who runs their country, as in, like, you know, voting in their leaders. So if that's the case, well, then what's the point of, you know, having the people vote in the first place? You know, if you're going to have, you know, like a certain group, like who is going to decide who is the most, like in whose eyes is this person the most qualified? What's up?
Oh, nothing. I'm just talking about.
Oh yeah. Well, do you get what I'm saying? You know, like in whose eye, who decides who is the most qualified? Because, you know, you're gonna have to decide either by a committee or you're gonna have to decide by the people voting anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. I would the lines of like, you know, the people are voting, but you know, there's some, you know, there are still some people who can vouch, like, you know,
right.
Somebody, you know, somebody has to be an authority somewhere, somehow.
Right. So, Druid, you and I had a live stream not too long ago where, you know, obviously we had a lot of fun at the beginning. But you said something that was kind of interesting about like, you know, these same people who advocate this less democratically electing our leaders also, these people also are people who put a lot of essence on race and, you know, tribalism and stuff like that. Right. And what was your whole opinion about the need for group identification anyway?
Group identification, it depends on your definition. Oh, I hear a lot of echo through your mic.
Well, yeah. I can hear the echo, but I honestly
I hear a large amount of echo through your mic.
But it seems like it's reduced heavily, so I guess you're gonna have to make the best of a bad situation. That's all.
It'll get in the way of me speaking, but okay.
Tell that girl to put pillows over it or something.
No, it's not even like Hart's microphone. It's
No, I'm joking.
I think it's because you're using your laptop microphone, and you also have speakers on.
Yeah, that's probably it. It's probably me, if anything else.
Yeah. So anyway, could you restate the question?
So you know what? Forget that. I actually want to ask Lib here something. Hold on, I'm gonna have to close the door. One of my roommates is home. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. So the question was this. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just ask a different question. What are some actual solutions we could have? Because I think that everyone always likes, part of our forte is that we are so autistic. We bitch about politics on all of our channels. So.
Me, not so much, but yeah, okay. I can see
that. You're more of the music, and sometimes politics comes in too.
I'm more of the music and in general not posting type of sort of person.
But Lib, I would like to actually hear some actual solutions. Like what it's like. I'm not saying you need to be the guy with the solutions. I'm not going to say, hey, President Trump calls you up. We need you to solve world hunger. But I mean,
right.
What are some things you think you would try to do to solve? Let's start with something small, like the Black community. What would you say?
I mean, the one thing with Black community, there have been testimony where, like, again, it's sort of, you have to change attitudes to a certain degree, because I've heard some testimony from some African Americans where they're like, basically there's certain attitudes like, why, there's an attitude against being educated, and like sort of like, why are you talking white? Why are you acting white and stuff like that? And it's just like, speaking like a certain level, certain standard of English, and certain, getting educated and stuff like that. There shouldn't be a stigma against that. I'm not saying it's in all Black communities, but there are some, that have this stigma, and it's just like, it just seems like a mind-boggling bad stigma. It just seems self-harm and stuff like that. I don't know exactly where it came from. Maybe it was just sort of like like trying to stick together, sort of like somebody's trying helping themselves or whatever. Then it sort of takes away from the community as a whole. And so this attitude needs to change in wherever it is, essentially, in that people need to improve themselves, and they shouldn't be ashamed of it, essentially, and shouldn't be shamed for it. I mean, that's some place to start, I suppose.
Yeah. Jude, you got anything to add to that?
Well, when you said fix the problem of the Black community, so to speak, it's kind of an ambiguous, well, not ambiguous. Well, yeah.
Nebulous?
Ambiguous is the word. It's kind of like a really vague thing to ask. It's like, what exactly would the problem be? Like, could you describe it for me?
All right, well, let's talk about the high crime rate, because you're right. It was
like, for example, the high crime rate. Hart does say that there is like a general stigma around like so-called talking white, so-called against education or whatever. But I believe that it's kind of just. See, I'm kind of not able to speak from experience on this because, one, I am not Black, and two, I have not lived in a Black community.
I thought you identified as Black.
I wish. I wish I could identify as like Asian African. Yeah, I can't really speak from experience on this, but when it comes to the high crime rate, I think most of it just has to do with the fact that people are continuing to choose to live in these high crime areas, and really, like, if they want to raise a family or if they want to like not be in poverty, they should be able to reach higher. You know that, but they continue to live in these like low income neighborhoods, these high crime neighborhoods, mainly sometimes because they have no other choice, like they aren't really in a high income place. But some of them actually have the choice to move out of those areas. Some of them actually have the choice to actually go somewhere and get a job and get college, because at least in theory, our equal opportunity society allows them to get some college education or some scholarships, etc. But I think the main problem with the high crime rate in these areas is that they simply just choose to keep living there and continue to contribute to all the crime, even though on the same note, they're speaking out against it for some odd reason.
Hart, you want to respond to that? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, it's sort of. I mean, I don't know specifically on like some people choosing to stay even though they could leave, but I mean it's in regards to sort of going back to the sort of high crime thing is like. I mean, and we do have studies that essentially having fatherless homes and stuff like that. Essentially, it does sort of men will look for a father figure, and if there isn't one, and the gangs sort of have one, then they may go there. And one of the things people pointed out is again on welfare is like single mothers will have an increased amount of welfare. And that essentially is an incentive, not it's not necessarily to blame for all of it necessarily, but I mean, there incentives can build up and stuff like that. If there's an incentive for single mothers, and we have studies that show having a 2-person household is better for children, maybe could be a place to start as well on top of that. So at least make it neutral in the sense that like. It's not, it's essentially the same whether or not it's a single or 2-person household, basically.
Yeah. All right. So, Druid, thoughts?
Well, I kind of wanted Hart to more cover over the fact that some people, like some in the Black community, have the chance to actually like leave those areas. If that like. Some of them don't have the option, but there are a good part who actually openly embrace like gang lifestyles and stuff like that, even though gang violence is a high concern.
Yeah,
go on.
I mean, there's definitely there's some double standards and stuff like that, and like I would say like if it's a bad neighborhood, you would want to move your kids out. If it's a bad neighborhood, there's gangs. Gang violence, people get killed. There's some of the highest homicide rates and stuff like that is due to gang violence. Get out. Like, I can't, again, I'm not really speaking from experience, but I mean, I can't, if there's bullets flying and, you have to duck when you hear a car, backfire, maybe it's, maybe you should get out. Yeah, that's definitely a good start. Yeah.
If I may add in, I think it's also that, like Druid said, like some people are attracted to gangs. I think it's because gangs are hyper masculine. Obviously, not healthy masculinity; it's unhealthy masculinity. But so many people forget that young boys really do seek that out. I mean, that's why I really love the movie Den of Thieves, because it was a very alpha male kind of movie, that talks about, police who are willing to get the job done. Now, granted, the movie had corrupt police, so obviously not quite the role models we were hoping for, but, they're kind of like in the sense like, we're the police who get shit done because we don't play by the rules. Now, granted, it was all a movie, but as you can clearly see, everyone's attitude is, is very like alpha male. And I think that a lot of people saw that movie because even though it wasn't like trying to say it's okay to be a man, it was full of so much masculinity. I saw like 3 girls in there in the entire movie, and the rest of the people in the theater it was like packed with young black males. And I thought, it is because 50 Cent is there, and so is O'Shea Jackson Jr., which is Ice Cube's son. But even most of them, when I was talking to them out of the theater, they're like, yeah, man, those guys are badass. I think I might want to be a cop. What's up? I want to put these niggas down. And I think that when you don't have that in your family, not saying all the people at the theater didn't have that. I'm saying when you really look at it, we do idolize masculine men for being just that. And when you don't have that in your home, like think about
hero.
What?
being a hero, essentially being a hero, essentially.
Yeah,
somebody you look up to.
Yeah, and think about it. Think about all like what they're always talking about rap news. Like, yo, what's up? I roll on my 64. I got a Glock 19 and roll up on these nigga. Shoot it like it.
You don't listen to much rap music nowadays, do you?
Do what?
It's past that point. Now everybody talks about Xanax, and every line is Xanax.
Fantastic.
Like one day there'll be a rap song where like the whole hook is Xanax, 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 Xanax.
I think that's nihilism, though, when you really think about it. It's kind of nihilism. It's like, well, we tried the hyper masculine. What's up? I'm in the hood right now. We got all these bitches right next to me, and it just didn't work out. Fuck it. Let's take some Xanax and forget our lives. Yeah. It's kind of like when metal went from I'm like party out of nights. So I didn't know, like Nirvana.
I mean, to be fair, if I recall correctly, this was in one of the shootings at like Black Lives Matter sort of protests. I don't remember which one. This was, I want to say like a year plus ago, but they essentially were like, if you guys have problems with the police and stuff like that, we are hiring essentially. So like, and a bunch of people signed up. So I mean, like definitely if, they have problems with the police, joining the police, making sure, sort of joining the police and, contributing basically, and that's a proper avenue as well. I mean, look at the Irish. The Irish, way back in the day, the Irish were treated pretty badly. They weren't. I
was just gonna say the Irish did that, but go on.
But yeah, they weren't considered. I think they weren't considered white. They were considered low class criminals and stuff like that. And eventually, they moved up. They joined police and stuff like that. And now, they are a staple of police and enforcing law and stuff like that. So I mean, it's entirely possible for the Black community to do that if there's sort of an impetus to do that. So
good. Good.
Really, no comment.
Well, and I think another thing is also that I think people forget this. I talk about the nihilistic view, and mental illness. I actually have a few Black friends who said that they really don't like the fact that you can't do this, but mental illness is something that they can't talk about on the Black community or homosexuality. So when you think about it, all these problems are there, and I grew up in a divorce household, and I felt very much alone, and so I gained a lot of weight because eating was the one thing I could do to make myself feel better. And the reason why I never stopped is because I said, until I'm able to even move out of the house, what's the point? I could say I should stop trying to mask my emotional problems with food, because then and just solve my real problems. But then I thought, how can I do that? I can't legally leave, and there's nowhere for me to go. So what's the point? So I think a lot of people maybe in the Black community have a similar attitude towards crime and maybe homosexuality and depression and mental illness. Is that what's the point in solving all these other problems? Since most of the community wants to keep to themselves. There's gangs everywhere. You probably won't get anything solved. I mean, there's a really sad line in Austin Powers where that bastard says something that really hit me where I live. He said, I eat because I'm sad, and I'm sad because I eat. Well, think about the Black community. Maybe they gangbang because they don't have fathers, and they don't have fathers because maybe their fathers were gang members and got shots. You know what I mean? It's kind of a cycle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, two things in regard to that, actually. In regards to homosexuality, like, it's weird that sort of the left is like, oh, the minorities are all progressive and stuff like that. But you look at it like Latinos and to a certain degree African Americans, like, yeah, homosexuality is looked down upon, and there's a lot more socially conservative sort of views on that. So I mean, it's kind of a weird, it's a weird thing that they're like, oh, the most progressive, diverse, blah 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 blah, and it's just kind of a weird not double standard, but just a weird projection of sort of values supposedly. But yeah.
Oh No, he didn't. Drew, what is your response? Oh no.
Well, he brought up the left and how like they think minorities are progressive or whatever. It's like yes and no, because as you said, there are like black conservatives and like Latino conservatives and stuff like that. I think the left banks way too much on minorities as it is right now. Like
Yeah,
they
but
bank,
yeah, you can.
huh?
If you look at the demographics, the Democratic Party, there's significant amounts of minorities, which I
Right.
mean sort of explains why they cater to it to a bit, right? But yeah, what I mean is like, sure they vote left a lot. Minorities vote, so, more prevalently left, but at the same time, it's like there aren't, it's not one unified thing. It's like again, like Latinos and blacks are like more socially conservative.
Right. I think the general view is that they vote left because like it's not necessarily because of the pandering nature of the left. It's more so because of the abrasive nature of the right. Because yeah.
I don't know.
I don't call myself a liberal because like I call myself an anarchist because that's closest to what I believe, but I'm not necessarily like a full-on anarchist where I'm like this whole thing doesn't matter. It all doesn't matter. It's like I know I've called myself an anarcho-nihilist in the past, but again, it just comes closest to what I believe. I'm not firmly set in that position.
If I may comment as a de facto conservative on this podcast, I think that there is some truth to the abrasiveness of the right. In that, I don't know if the right is necessarily abrasive, as we are kind of autistic. In that, and I can say that because I have autism, so I get a free pass automatically.
Well, to be fair, currently the right, or at least in America, has a divide between them.
Drew, do you mind if I want to hear what you just said, but I do want to add in this one point. Do you mind if I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I was going to say is that you think about what the left has, because think about who they've gotten on their side. Hollywood, music industry, a lot of public works, like a lot of the teachers unions. So when you think about it, they have kind of been in the business of entertainment for a long time. They've kind of been, they've kind of think about this. Like a lot of people said when Richard Nixon went on television, everyone who listened to him on the radio said he won the debates against John F. Kennedy, while everyone who watched him on TV said John F. Kennedy won, because John F. Kennedy was charismatic and outgoing. And when you think about it, think about how many people in Hollywood are just so far to the left. It's not just like, all Hollywood promotes these messages. When you see someone like Bill Clinton up there, you think to yourself, don't you think he might have learned from some actors how to play the card of, the charismatic, outgoing politicians, get things done? Think about how many people, like on the left are more musically talented. Think about how much of this is mixed in and woven in. Charisma is a real thing, and people forget that. People forget that social skills can sometimes trick people into voting for things that are against their own self-interest. So, yeah, I think the abrasiveness of the right is kind of a thing, in that you don't really see a whole lot of people on the right learning charismatic talking points. They don't learn how to talk to other people. They're, classically like, oh, but you kids should pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Let me smoke this pipe over here.
That's why not a lot of people like friggin' what's his name, Mitch McConnell, whenever he's like, this economy plan, it ain't gonna work because you see it ain't touching on all the subjects that we want to touch on as a party. It's like nobody likes that guy. He lacks the charisma and he just comes across as a douche, to be honest.
Even someone like what's his name, Ted Cruz, who's a little more socially inept, but he's not as like socially retarded as Mitch McConnell. He got so annoyed at Mitch McConnell, he called Mitch McConnell a liar in front of Congress, and also Mitch McConnell looks like a turtle.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's not been said before.
1990s and stuff like that. Politics is very much, to a certain degree, like party messages and stuff like that, sort of polarized and solidified a lot in sort of a lot more defined stance. Because I mean, like, since when did like, being a Democrat mean just like let's get rid of, like, vast swathes of guns and stuff like that, instead of just more sensible stuff like that? Or I mean, the thing is, like, I don't even exactly agree with Democrats on gun control, especially not now. But the thing is, like, since when did it have to be like so set, basically, that so well defined these sort of definitions? Like, so when you say you're Democrat or Republican or liberal and conservative, that like automatically it's just like all these views are like sort of attributed to you.
I think I kind of, if I may, I think I kind of know where that came from. You see, throughout most of history, the Democrats weren't staunchly against gun control. Sorry, they weren't staunchly against getting rid of. They weren't staunchly against people having guns, but they started not liking people having guns more and more and more, because their original purpose behind taking away guns was the same reason why they wanted marriage to be a legal issue. It's because for a long time it wasn't even an issue of legality. It wasn't even marriage was. More was taking away guns an issue. But the thing is, the black community, you see, people in the blacks, they didn't want blacks to marry whites, so they actually put marriage into the court system so they could outlaw black interracial marriage. And similar to that, guns started becoming more and more of a hotbed issue because Democrats didn't want their enforcement arm, which was at the time, obviously it's not anymore. The Democratic Party has changed a lot, but at the time, the Ku Klux Klan was their enforcement arm, and they didn't want them to have trouble, lynching black people. So it was a lot easier to do that by taking away guns, by convincing them to do that. And since they wanted that to continue, they started to just want more and more anti-gun stuff. And eventually they started realizing that their political opponents, the Republicans and the conservatives, were a lot weaker when they didn't have guns as well. They could inflict more, not just racially motivated violence, but also politically motivated violence. And eventually they just kind of just built off of that. But originally
actually, in regards to that, like it was really, I think there was an article in the Washington Post, I want to say, maybe the New York Times, but one of the, basically it was like, the title was something along the lines of like, guns uphold white privilege, or something along those lines. And it was really ironic because in the article itself, it talks about how gun control was used to, like, again, essentially like, I think it would mention California in that, like, some Black Panthers like walked in front of City Hall or in City Hall with like open carry, because California was open carry back then, and they immediately changed the law like that. And so it's like, why are you then blaming, like, why is guns white privilege when you can easily just flip it around and say, oh, hey, look, gun control was used by essentially racism or, racists. And it's just like, it was just a stunning lack of self-awareness by the newspaper and the author. And it's just like, I like, how else better can you put it? You made, you essentially made the case against you instead of for you.
I think they kind of make the case nowadays because a lot of people in the in the Republican Party, or at least what we knew to be the Republican Party before it got all messed up, a lot of people were kind of connected to, not really connected, but it was implied that they had some white supremacist viewpoints. Because if you ask any average person what they think the Republican Party, at least in my state, they'll pretty much tell you, there's some people in there that are racist. They might not even have all the info or whatever, but it's kind of like a generally held view in some blue states that conservatives and, by extension, Republicans have connections to racist ideologies and stuff like that.
I think you just doxed yourself there. You said you're in a blue state.
Well, I mean, there's like I don't know, 2 blue states left now, according to HuffPost. So.
Oh yeah.
The thing about that is, like, I think James, the guy who I do a streaming with regularly, he basically said, like, with conservatives, like, the attitude is like, we're better than you. That's the racism. Yeah. But the other thing was, for liberals, it's like, you're below us. So it's a lot. It's subtler, but it's the bigotry of low expectations, essentially.
All right. And like to go off what I was saying earlier, I'll let you continue later. But they tout gun control as like, well, not gun control, but like guns as a thing that upholds white supremacy or whatever. They kind of hold that view because, like I said before, they associate the Republican Party with racism, no matter what like facts they have about it. But they also realize that the Republican Party is primarily the ones who defend groups like the NRA and like other pro-gun lobbyists and stuff like that. So they kind of make this vague connection, but it's still a connection that they kind of work off of.
I think that's good.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's important to realize there's definitely racism in both parties. I think that the problem is Republicans have had actual outright racist in their party as part of the Republican, not necessarily conservative, but Republican forte, if you will. And the reason why is I think that, after a while of seeing like, the black community be broken down so much that gangs started to roam around, the Ku Klux Klan started going a little bit more right-wing because they're like, well, at least these people are calling out the blacks, saying that kind of stuff. And but I think that from a more sly institutional area, I think that more actual racist effects have been actually dealt out by the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party maybe doesn't necessarily hate black people as much as they see them as you said, bigotry of low expectations essentially means
just seeing them as tools, basically.
Not even as tools, as more like retarded monkeys. You know what I mean?
That's true. Because the worst, it was I want to say college professor or something like that. I think she was black, and she was like, for blacks, we should drop the math requirement for blacks in college because it's too hard for them. And it's just like what kind of optics and messages are you sending if you're saying, oh, blacks, it's too hard for blacks to do math? Like it's just basically how it's sort of like it's like the burden of the white man to like hold, this is a very old sort of Victorian sort of thing. It's like we need to bring civilization to these poor third world nations kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, manifest destiny, if you know what I'm saying. Is that what you mean?
Not so much that, because manifest destiny was like, hey, this is our land and we're going to take it. But more along the lines of like they can't help. We need to help them help themselves. But we need to help them because they can't help themselves, kind of thing.
And there's not zero truth to that. There's not zero truth to that, obviously, because but at the same time, a better solution would be, instead of helping them get farther, it'd be to help remove ridiculous barriers that have kind of essentially given them enough rope to hang themselves with. Because the reason why they give so much welfare out in the first place is not because that will help them. It's because when someone has welfare, they won't have the motivation they won't have the immediate need. The carrot and the stick. It's a very real thing. If you're scared that you're going to starve the next day, you'll find a way to make money. And if you know that you're going to end up, not making any money by doing something illegally, you're going to find a legal way to make money. Those opportunities are already around. But I think that the biggest problem is they're kind of giving them so much without expecting something in return.
So actually, in regards to that, what's interesting is one of the things I've read is, so you know how there's like this famine or something in some like African country or something like that, right? And it's like
African country. I'm pretty sure there's one right now.
One of them. So the thing is, like, there's a famine, and there's this whole sort of outpouring of like, hey, let's just grab a whole bunch of our food and just dump it over that, just give them a bunch of food, right? Actually, one of the things that actually is bad about that, in the sense that that actually will put African farmers out of business, because now there's this giant influx of money and sort of price or whatever we like. One of the things they said was actually better. This, I don't remember the article exactly, but basically said it's sort of like price support. So i.e. like sort of subsidies, like price subsidies, instead of just dump like the market with a whole bunch of essentially free.
What's up, Trude? Wait, hold on. What's up, Druid?
Well, that is arguably true that it could put the farmers out of business, but it's kind of a less serious note. But like, if there was a famine to begin with, I don't think those farmers would be making anything to begin with.
Yeah. Well,
like, it's not an absolute lack of food. It's just that people are going hungry. But
right, I'm sure it's it depends on the nature of the famine. If it's just a straight up drought, and maybe the farmers aren't going to produce anything anyways. But it kind of depends on the situation. So, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, my solution would be this. If you give them not only that, but it also would kind of you see this problem with bears in the wild is that when you start handing them sandwiches, that's why it's illegal to do that at Yellowstone, because if you do that, they're going to be waiting for a sandwich and they're not going to go eat the berries, they're not going to go fish, and all of a sudden they're going to die off from starvation when you stop coming around. So one of my solutions would be, go to what?
Or wander into a camp.
Yeah, and kill someone. And the thing is that one of the things that makes me think similar to that is that whatever the issue with the drought is, what if all you did was give them books in their languages that were easy to understand about why it's happening, give them a few supplies to fix it, but then told them we will not give you any aid, because at that point what that would mean is that they would either have to go ahead, address the problem, fix it head on, or they would die. Because if you take away too much of that incentive, you are going to essentially do the same thing with the bears, because humans and all creatures are inherently looking for any kind of leisure we have. That's why obesity is such a big problem, is because if you can avoid working, it's only very recently in human history that we've had the technological advances that we have. So for most of life, humans were starving and struggling to get through life. So any little luxury or any little ability to just lay down and relax was like, a huge advantage. It was oftentimes a luxury unto itself. So, I think that if you take away that, it will backfire. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know about just straight books, but I mean, if we're talking about like sort of address the sort of problem in a long-term essentially long-term sustainable way, like i.e. like, hey, there's a drought and maybe, they need like pumps to dredge up, for wells or something, or something along those lines, in that it'll be a long-term solution instead of just dumping a bunch of supplies necessarily. It's essentially giving tools essentially to sustain and stuff like that. That would be better than necessarily just dumping food.
Yeah. Instead of just saying like starving kids in Africa could have eaten that food, you'd be like, starving kids in Africa should have at least gotten the chance to have this food, but made it themselves.
Yeah, well, I don't even mean like pumps. I would mean like you would give them like the assembly pieces to make a pump. Like you would give them like all these things, like the tools that they would need to make the pump. But then you give them the instructions, say if you don't do anything with this, you're going to die.
Yeah, there's a difference between like giving them fresh water when like their water supply is kind of like dirty or whatever, and like giving them like straight up canned food and like a bunch of stuff. Like true, some third world countries wouldn't have the industrial power to make like canned food or like adequate food supplies because already they're going through a famine. But just like Arcian said, if you give a bear a sandwich, they'll just keep asking for more. Eventually, you're just going to be pouring a bunch of supplies into this place, and they're relying on you instead of trying to fix their situation. So I agree with that end.
I mean, the other thing is, in regards to this, as from what I remember, at least, like a lot of the problems sort of in regards to food aren't so much like starvation anymore, because like assuming my knowledge of the stats and stuff like that are correct, it's not so much like starvation, but like nutrition and stuff like that is one of the more leading problems than so much just straight starvation a lot of times. So like people are, like if you just eat rice or like wheat and stuff like that, that's just straight carbs. There's not much nutrients and stuff like that in grain, essentially. So the nutrition is the problem, not so much starvation these days, at least.
Yeah. Sam Kinison had a good joke on this. He was talking about, I think maybe Arcian's seen it. Have you heard Sam Kinison?
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Is it called maybe you should go where the food is?
Yeah, he did a piece where he was talking about like people who film documentaries in Africa and stuff like that, detailing like nutritional struggles or like starving people or whatever. And He's like, you know what would be great? I mean, I think the camera crew could give that kid a sandwich. And then yeah, he actually just screams like, just move where the food is. But he actually had a point. Like, comedian aside, he had a point. True, again, it goes back to that notion, maybe they can't move, but you're living in a country that's primarily hot, is sandy, can't grow food. There's no question why there's a famine there. What can you grow? Like, the only thing you could probably grow is in like really hot, humid rainforests or along the coast. And not everybody is just going to suddenly live on the coast, because then you'd have California and you'd have drought. But he had a good bit on that.
Some of the problems also is like, at least in regards to like on the edges of the Sahara Desert and stuff like that, there's sort of not erosion, but like basically like, because I remember there was a story about this guy who basically like was lining up rocks and stuff like that to sort of catch water and sort of nutrients and stuff like that, and he actually reclaimed from the desert sort of this dried land and stuff like that. So it's like there are, there's problems with sort of losing land to just straight up desert. Like once the plants are dead, basically it dries up and it's not useful anymore. So he was trying to do that, and once he did that, though, like the land became valuable, and then like I think it was like the government was like essentially trying to take it or something along those lines, and it's just like it was a weird situation. And so how was this issue possible?
In South Africa, they have actually a really big problem, which is that the black people, the black majority there, are just destroying the cropland, just destroying it. They're overworking all the crops. They're really messing it up really, really bad. Lauren Southern did a whole thing about this, and this is why I can actually say she's not the same as Tommy Loren, and that Tommy Loren is 90% screaming into a camera and saying and just calling people names. Lauren actually does decent work. And the thing is, it really tells you, obviously, yeah, there's some areas of land where they're just unfarmable, but most of the time, Africa is very, very rich in resources, and most people will not even be living from the get-go in areas that you can't live in. Like if you're not very intelligent, which I'm going to say this straight up, most African people aren't, because they're shithole countries, so you can't exactly get a college education from the Congo very easily. But the thing is that most people are undereducated, probably just say well, this area over here is sandy and it smells like shit, and I can't find any water. I think I'll go back to Somalia.
Right. And like I said, I'm gonna do this to death, but there is the possibility that they literally can't move. So
I mean, in regards to the college education and stuff like that, like some of the points of the alt-right are basically one of the reasons. So there are points against that, against sort of immigration and stuff like that, is because there are a lot of for instance, I think Nigeria has a lot of college-educated people who come to Western countries and do very well. And one of the alt-right's points is essentially like if they were in their countries, they would be helping their country sort of, like leading their country and advancing and stuff like that. So, I mean, however you feel about that, that is kind of a valid point in the sense that, if they were college educated and they stayed in their country, they could help advance it and stuff like that. But at the same time, to sort of my views on this, like I think I'm a little more nationalist in the sense that, like, if we have good, bright people coming in and essentially can help essentially the United States, I don't see a problem with that so much. I'm not like throw open the doors, obviously, but like having the best and brightest might not be a bad thing for the United States.
So there's a lot of college degrees out in Nigeria. Like, is it all online? Because if so, I would like my $2,000 from that prince that said he'd give it back to me.
They do, according to the stats, very well. They have high IQs, very well educated. However, I don't know exactly what degrees they're getting, but they're well educated and they do well.
Oh, well, fantastic for them. But a lot of poorer nations produce a lot stupider people because they just don't have the infrastructure. And one of the things that really annoys me about the alt-right and the identitarians, not the European generation identity, because they're kind of their own thing. You know, like I'm talking about like Identity Europa, or even the figureheads of that, you know. What annoys me about them is a lot of times, you know, they're pretty much alt-right, but they don't use the term alt-right. And what they oftentimes say is, you know, like, well, clearly you can see IQ differences between races. I'm like, yeah, but you are not exactly, you know, acknowledging why that is. You know, you're just saying, oh, look, it's different. Hooray, point made. Drop the mic, walk out of the room. You know, it's not very good for making a good point, because then you ignore, well, where did they come from? They came from a very shitty country. Oh, what did their parents do? Oh, well, there's lots of, you know, there's lots of non-monogamous wedlock children that are born in a lot of these nations that don't have the same value system as us. You know, as we all know, that causes inbreeding. And inbreeding takes any progress your race makes it grow backwards. You know what I mean? They just kind of say, oh, this is something we can prove, and then they don't acknowledge why did that happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't even list the source of the study that claims they have higher or lower IQ than other races, et cetera, et cetera.
James also never cites the sources, I swear to God, and neither does Richard Spencer.
Like, they'll just say, it's been proven, look it up, use Google.
Yeah.
Do research.
Y'all need to be educated. You know, we need to educate you.
I mean, yeah, the thing is, like, I do believe the alt-right is a little bit too deterministic in terms of, like, you know, your genetics equals your potential and stuff like that. I think they're a little bit push that a little bit hard. I mean, granted, you know, there are going to be genetic, you know, influences and stuff like that. And again, there's going to be environmental influences, and it all sort of depends on, you know, how much from each and how it, you know, produces people and stuff like that. Yeah. Influences.
Well, and then now let's actually get to a real solution about this whole ethno state being proposed. Because let's just say that these people did want to, like, go ahead and, like, annex a state, and they just wanted to, you know, like, leave. What the hell?
They already have one. It's called Utah.
I love it.
Yeah, but the problem then is you're gonna have, like, Protestants rubbing shoulders with Mormons, and that's never gonna go well.
Oh, yeah, it was a landlocked, so there's a problem with that too. So they're gonna be like, "No, we want the coast. Give us the coast. We want it." No, because they're landlocked.
Yeah.
Right.
Your talk about it, ethno state or whatever. Was that from the stream that you showed me earlier?
Yes, that was it.
Okay, let me start off. That guy, I haven't looked him up. I haven't heard of him before this point. But yeah, but, like,
which guy?
There was a guy who said that government is basically just like a ethnic ethnic eugenics program. It was, yeah. He said government is just a big eugenics program. You know what? You heard me laugh when you played that clip, right, Arsene?
Yeah. By the way, do you want me to? I'm sorry. Heart, can you wait for a sec? Drew, do you want me to send you the link? Do you want me to send you the link to that stream so you can screen?
No, I'm not going to sit through that crap.
Okay. Send to me on Twitter or something like that. I'll take a look at this. Oh gosh, this is going to be great. This sounds fun.
All I needed to hear was those few seconds, and that just, yeah. It doesn't piss me off because, like, I've heard that type of speak before, like, even from my own friends. But, like, just, okay, so here's the thing. The people who want an ethno state have to realize that in order to have that, you also have to consider in mind class. You also have to consider in mind, like, equal opportunity, economics, stuff like that. Even if you're all one race, still, you have different backgrounds and stuff like that. So there's still going to be discrimination or whatever. People who claim...
Not only that, they also have to consider most people don't even want ethno states. So let's say they went to Utah. And let's just say somehow Utah managed to, as a state, literally levitate off of hover above the earth. So now it's no longer landlocked. It becomes an island and floats all the way into the Pacific.
But BioShock Infinite?
Yes, yes.
Floating island.
Yes.
Sounds like prime setting for this already, but continue.
Wait a minute. Wait, have you guys actually played BioShock Infinite?
No, but I've seen gameplay.
I'm working on BioShock 2 right now.
Guys, I'm going to screen share right now. This is going to make it. BioShock Infinite basically is an ethno state. Let me show you why. Hold on.
Because all the characters are in it.
They're sort of like, white national or white supremacist-ish, and the minorities are, working in low whatever wages and stuff like that. And yeah, but
one second. Hold on. You're gonna. This is basically what they're talking about. Hold on. Let me just screen share. This is the best, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to save the world right now. We are going to save the world with this one stream. This is not slacktivism. This is clearly a good use of your time. Thank you for tuning in. Please give us money.
I'll send my PayPal link in the comments.
Exactly. Okay. So let's see. Which one is it? Hold on.
Was it the third one, maybe?
There we go. Hold on. Oh, fuck this.
Prager University, huh?
Prager, yeah. No, I'm not. Some things that Prager University says is. Hold on. Blah 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 blah.
John Galt. Rant. Cryptic question. Blah
blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah blah.
Together a gram for brands. Katie Randall and Super Network.
You can probably scroll through the video instead of just hitting the key.
Freeloaders that stole, violated, and unjustly took from the captains of industry. Ryan was tired of working and not getting what.
Oh, here we go.
We're going to abbreviate the discussion.
Looks like a very nice game, right? Good for children.
I've played the original.
Yeah, good for children. Oh, he was just slam dunking him. It was a basketball game, children. Don't worry.
Now let's be clear. The trendy discussion on BioShock Infinite has something to do with quantum entanglement and multiverses, and while it's a great discussion, it's already been covered ad nauseum. We're going to abbreviate the discussion because, well, science is hard. The third installment of the BioShock series moves from the underwater world of Rapture to the floating city, Columbia. A play on the United States capital, Columbia is a sort of floating Eden founded by a man named Zachary Hale Comstock. Comstock is a fictional stand-in for a 19th century New York political figure, Anthony Comstock, famous for his fight against obscenity and his rather prudish values. The Comstock character mirrors Anthony's public feud with noted anarchist Emma Goldman, who is doubled by Daisy Fitzroy. Comstock founds Columbia with the promise of providing a place for God's people, apart from the world of sinners and the Sodom below.
And so our prophet led the people away from the Sodom below, up into the city, where they created an even more perfect union.
This image of Columbia as a shining beacon in the sky has its philosophical justification in the concept of American exceptionalism. This whole landscape. America is considered God's country. Forgiveness of sins, salvation, and baptism are all religious themes in Infinite. But like its predecessor, this game explores the dark side of this philosophy.
I baptize you in the name of our prophet, in the name of our founders, and the name of our Lord.
Similar to Comstock's Columbia, the expansion into the new frontier was
world
sinners for the sake of securing the national indigenous people of the wilderness, aka those not willing to accept the question of land. The ideology of this philosophy is inextricably woven into the fabric of history. Slavery, labor strikes, the abuses of the Irish and Chinese workers who built the city for God's people. Fearful of the anarchist Vox Populi, afraid of the Irish and Chinese threat, and scared of racial mixing, Columbia is a paranoid place.
Why is one bathroom for colors and the other for whites?
It just is.
Seems like an unnecessary complication.
Infinite explores America's haunted past. Hold it. What?
Hello, sir. Don't you pay me no never mind? Just some foolishness, just monkey shines.
Perhaps this is why the enemies in the game are robotic George Washingtons called Patriots.
Come on, folks. Show your allegiance to flag and to the nation. It was me. It was all me. Please. Please. Please, what are you doing? Come on. Are you going to throw it? Or are you taking your coffee black these days?
So, yeah. I think we all get the point, right? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I was like, where the hell are we? Let me just stop screen sharing. So, now, I do want to make it clear, I think that is probably the most cartoonish and probably the most extreme version of the ethno state. I'm sure James also would never say. I'm sure like Richard Spencer, Ayla. I'm sure they would never say, "Oh, we see two black people. We see a black person and a white person getting married. Let's all throw baseballs at them." You know, I'm sure they would never say that. But come on, it's that.
I mean, no. See, the thing is, the ethno state will be all good things, no bad things. Obviously.
Yeah, because like the ethno state is primarily desired by people who think that like because of their race that they're going to be on top, you know. But if you have a state comprised entirely of one race, you're going to have different classes to do it because somebody like not everybody's going to want to go into the factories, not everybody's going to want to work on farms, etc. So you're just going to get class levels and stuff like that, anyways, and you're going to have lower orders and higher orders. The only
so does that mean we're saying that the ethno state is going to devolve into a communist
Well, like the ethno state is pretty much unachievable because like all the people in it see themselves ethnicity, or at least people who value their own ethnicity or think that their ethnicity is like the best thing ever. Like white people think their whiteness is the best whiteness you can ever find in Utah, but like an ethno state is unachievable because inherently people who want an ethno state are sort of elitist because they think that their own race is the best.
Well, not only that, I would also say that one of the reasons why it's also untenable is because, well, I mean, a lot of the terrible ideologies that they constantly rail against, that they say destroy America, were created by Jewish people and primarily white Jews. You know, so a lot of these things are not exclusive, not only to a race, but also one of the things I've really harp on them for is this idea: how do you enforce that? Sure, you could say no immigration in, but the thing is, how would you be able to enforce that? Because eventually that you could just be pressured from the outside world by, you know, let's say the outside world never wanted to create, like, you know, like never wanted to declare war in this ethno state, this essentially a BioShock alt-right edition or something. But what about trade? You know, trade is something you have to get involved in no matter what, because you know, every single country that ever tried to, you know, use tariffs or just completely cut itself off for trade completely failed on its face. So you're going to import other people who may be able to give you the technical skills and how to use the products you're importing and talk to the people that you're exporting.
Exactly.
I mean, eventually, you know, and plus, where do you get the land? Because I think the only civilized way of doing this is to find a piece of land that is both desirable and is not being used by anyone else. Because what about the people who are already on that land? You say, well, we'll pay them to leave. But what if they choose not to? Do you really have the moral right to force them off the land? If it's part of the United States, I doubt the United States government would give you that permission. I doubt that anyone in the right mind would say that either.
And you're not going to move to somewhere like Greenland or Antarctica where like there isn't, well, even then that land is kind of claimed, but you're not going to move to places like that just because there's some unclaimed land and you want to form your ethno state. I know you're white, but you're not too white to where you're resistant to snow.
The alt-right actually, because Richard Spencer actually teamed up or sort of endorsed Farrakhan. I forget his first name, but it's basically a black.
His name is Carl.
Or whatever, right? And so their idea is like, we're going to get all the people together who want their own ethno states and their own, you know, either, you know, a collectivized communist paradise, and all the people who want to end capping, and we're just going to chop up the United States and you know, we're all going to vote to, you know, break up the United States, and we're all going to have our own little, you know, utopias basically. And it's a weird alliance of
wait. I got the perfect solution. every Canadian who doesn't like the way Canada is running, become an American. We'll accept you right away. And we just give the alt-right Canada, and then because most of the people who are not, civil there, who don't want to leave there, are just, most of them are legal immigrants. They just push them out of the country. Hooray! Everybody wins. And instead of the celebrities moving to Canada, the alt-right will move to Canada.
Oh gosh.
That's no saying. Come on, most of Canada isn't really. Most of Canada is very sparsely populated, but is very much livable. Why not just give them a big chunk of Canada? Just have everyone move out of Ontario and just give them Toronto. There you go. Hooray!
Yeah. And you don't have to deal with the hot climates of Texas.
I mean, the right is okay with supplying the U.S. power, because that's basically what Canada does. They supply us like a lot of their energy production. I don't know, like a third to a half, I want to say, is like supplying energy to the United States.
Wait, are you talking like petrol, like gas?
Petrol, energy generation, all kinds of
lumber, stuff like that.
Why don't we rely on ourselves? We have more oil than almost any. Oh, that's right. We can't do onshore drilling.
Well, the thing is that in Oklahoma, for example, they have like a bunch of oil fields or whatever, but a lot of them are not operational anymore because they've simply run out of oil and they have to resort to fracking. And in Oklahoma, they're having increased earthquakes because of said fracking. And you can get into this environmental issue later, because I do believe that the earthquakes are a direct cause of fracking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think people are just too scared to drill inside our own land because they don't want to harm the parks. They don't want to move people off the land. And who's gonna provide the grass for the deer if the grass is covered by a gigantic iron drilling rig?
Well, not only that. Well, is that why all the people in Oklahoma stopped having their musical?
Sure.
Yeah, at some point, Hugh Jackman just stopped singing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other things, at least recently, Saudi Arabia and sort of OPEC and stuff like that voted to not turn down the spigot, because gas and oil and stuff like that has been relatively cheap, at least within the last couple years, a year or two or whatever. And so that was sort of aimed actually at harming both, I would say probably both Russia and the United States in sort of oil production, because Russians rely heavily on foreign currency coming in through oil production, and we were sort of getting our fracking and sort of these new sort of methods to extract sort of ungettable oil before, and they essentially turned on the spigot to put people out of business, basically.
Well, I gotta ask. Do we what else do we get from Canada other than oil, other than energy? Because I know some of that is not just from. Well, some of it's not just from petrol. It's got to be from Niagara Falls and shit.
Well, we get lumber from Canada, definitely, because they have the large wilderness in there.
Yeah,
Labrador.
But we could get that from Alaska. What the fuck? Wait, hold on, guys, quiet. What does America export from Canada?
Alaskans.
What does America import from Canada?
Alaskans,
Justin Bieber, energy.
It's currently our second largest goods trading partner with $544 billion in total goods trade during 2016.
Yeah.
Totaled $266 billion. Goods imports totaled $278.1 billion.
Wow, that could pay off 1% of our debt.
$12.1 billion in 2016.
Thanks, bitch. Anyways, come on.
Also, Vancouver, Canada, which is not really that far from Washington relative to where you guys are, but Vancouver, Canada is also the site of a lot of movie shoots, because that city is the basic generic city,
Oh, chemical is probably another thing as well, because a lot of our chemicals are actually made from fossil fuels, and
that's just
like that.
Petrol, isn't it? Isn't that just kind of an extension of petrol?
To a degree, yeah. Actually.
Yeah. Is that do you have crackers or something they were eating? I mean, I'm not judging it. I just hear something, because other than that, I'm going insane. What's up?
I'm not eating crackers.
Okay, then
Probably
okay,
some background noise from me.
Okay, because I guess I'm just going insane then. Thanks. I'm going crazy, and we have the records now. All right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
we could. So we're on the subject of like Canada and ethno states and stuff like that. We could probably get more general with our subject though.
Sure. What would you like to talk about?
Well, here's the one thing
I would say drugs, but no.
Yeah.
That's what aspect of drugs and legalization? Oh, gosh.
Well, do you think we could talk about maybe like well, first off, let's talk about something I think was kind of interesting because I'm literally working right now. Well, not right at this moment, but today all day I was working on part 2 of my first of my 6-part series. It's called the importance of taboos and shame. And this one was specifically focused on drugs. The first one was about pornography and how pornography doesn't make your life better. The second part is going to be on not just drugs, but just basically recreational substances, so like steroids, alcohol, recreational drugs, any kind of like maybe like anything that could be considered a recreational substance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one thing I actually wanted to ask is, have you heard of this whole pause pig movement? The positivity movement in the gay community.
No.
So it's very. What's up?
Wait, are you talking the Medicare thing?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, those things were like in 2005, but I don't know how big that movement actually is.
Well, what I'm saying, it's still going on. I mean, I've looked it up; it's still happening. Like it's like en masse, and I think myself, with the alt right, a lot of what they say is like, degeneracy is real, and I think that's very true. But I mean, I think that shouldn't there, like, when it comes to like doing drugs, and definitely shaming the gay community for their abhorrent behavior. Do you think that we really do need to sometimes be kind of socially conservative? So I'm not saying we shouldn't have socially liberal policies. I think a lot of my friends are social liberals, but I'm saying, like, do you think that there is some truth to the idea that if you have no shame, there is no such thing as laws? That laws are that politics are downstream from culture, and that it would destroy our world if everything that was bad had to be enforced at the point of a gun.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree that there shouldn't be, some social taboos and stuff like that. I mean, certain behaviors are obviously unhealthy and not good for you, and they shouldn't be encouraged. Sure.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's literally times where like some of these gay people are literally like cutting pieces of their condom before they have sex, and they tell their partner, "No, I don't have this virus," and then they give it to them. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, which is now a misdemeanor. I heard in California that it's now a misdemeanor instead of a felony or whatever. It's like, oh, great, yeah, purposely giving somebody AIDS is no longer a felony. Fantastic.
Yeah, when you think about it, if this were to happen in the straight community, and we're just talking about the portion of the straight community that loves to go clubbing and to like with promiscuous women, do you think that this would fly at all?
Giving other people AIDS? No.
Like especially like a man purposely sharing the AIDS virus, with women.
I mean, especially if it's not consensual and all that other stuff. Oh, hell no. It'd be straight. This straight rapist man is spreading this disease and hurting women and blah 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 blah. So, that's the attitude that I would think a lot of feminists would go with.
What was that?
I told her, I was like, I work in a warehouse, and this should not have ever.
What? Come close to the mic, sweetheart. Come close to the mic.
Basically that there would be an uproar. It would not be socially acceptable at all.
Yeah. Question to the girl behind you. Girls definitely talk to each other about this kind of stuff. Like, it's not something that they keep quiet, do they? They tend to, like, the second they know there's like either a player out there or someone who's dangerous, it's kind of isn't it kind of a common thing where like it kind of spreads throughout, the female community?
That was a different issue. It was talking about like warehouse work and stuff like that.
What the fuck?
Yeah, we weren't. Yeah, she wasn't talking about AIDS or anything like that. No.
Oh, okay. So, what the hell did warehouses come into this? I'm still kind of lost.
Jobs and work and stuff like that. It's not related to this conversation at all.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you have a muzzle? I'm kidding.
Easy.
I'm kidding.
Right.
Don't worry. I'm not an asshole. I'm not an asshole. Most of the time.
Anyways, but yeah. So yeah, it would not go over well with the sort of SJW feminist types at all. No.
No. Yeah. Well, not only that. I think that just men have a natural inclination to protect women, and I just think that the second someone heard that, they'd be like, like just a knee-jerk reaction. If this hit one single newspaper or what's on TV one time, I think we can all guarantee it. The public at large would immediately want this guy dead. Like, they'd have to put a bulletproof vest on this guy. Just, the straight guy that was, giving people the old sticky icky between the legs, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There'd be this huge uproar, definitely. I mean, from men and women, I think nobody wants relatives and stuff like that being infected with HIV or anything like that, which makes it so mind-boggling that California would change the law that way. But whatever's. California, I guess.
My guess is that a lot of gay people are kind of rebellious as it is, so they don't oftentimes have very good relationships with their family, and so it's not something that's easy to believe. Drew, do you want to hop into this basket of cancer?
You guys were talking about purposely spreading the AIDS virus, and I was still kind of skeptical about that.
I mean, there are people that do it. There's like that dentist.
It may just be my like ingrained thing, because like whenever I think of whenever I hear of events done by other people and things that are predicted, I always think, okay, what does this party have to gain from it, and what does the other party have to gain from it?
It's not really predicted. There's actually like statistics, like the CDC had some of the stuff about this.
Right.
And then there's tons of gay blogs that are very hard to get into. That are like very exclusive, where they actually try to contact each other to try to have sex parties just to get the AIDS virus.
But like, what would be the benefit of that?
So okay, so there's several. Okay, so in regards to like purposely infecting people maliciously, like without their consent, part of that is
just being malicious.
Is like malicious and revenge essentially, and sort of because you can't have sex with anybody because you have to disclose that that you have AIDS and stuff like that, and a lot of people won't, and so they get pissed off and they start spreading around. In regards,
not only that, isn't it also kind of a power thing? Like in the gay community, like they started getting to very extreme sex, and the more power you have in sex, the more adrenaline it is. It's kind of like that domination kind of thing. You know what I mean, right?
I mean, I haven't heard of somebody being like, "You got the gay." I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, sort of a taking back of power, sure. And the other thing, in regards to the Medicare video, that's just like a straight up fetish, like risk getting, I don't know, like a risk adrenaline rush thing. I don't ask me, I don't have it, so I don't know how it works with them, but I mean it's some kind of fetish. So
all right.
Yeah, well, but the problem is it starts to spread because these people have also committed rape. Like you saw that in the Medicare video, like they actually bragged about this, and they used pseudonyms so that way the police couldn't find them.
Right. in some of the posts. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they don't want it to just stop. You know, the problem with something like this is that if you don't punish them, if like you don't hold them down on the ground with a pair of handcuffs, taser them, put them in a squad car, and put them in jail, and say you're going to go to jail for life for attempted murder, these people can sort of kind of pervert the normal gay community into becoming this kind of a thing. You know.
Right. But by the way, I got to get off in about 10, 15 minutes.
I got to get up literally 5, so how about we wrap it up, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We should make our next stream about drugs and just talk about like one drug the whole time, except make the title be like, we're talking about everything. In fine print related to steroids.
Hey guys, so the next stream is going to be about heroin. Kids, if you want to learn how it works, well, listen to the stream.
Tune in next time. Same
bad channel, same bad place.
I was gonna replace that with something.
Adam West needs to get his fix. That's the only way he does good acting.
Yeah.
Did you just imagine Adam West tweeting Adam West tweeting me? I was like, Bird, where are you? Bird, what's wrong, Bird boy? Bird, where are you? And it was like, and the Bird comes in and goes like, holy shit, Adam, what happened? And he goes, I was like, you're supposed to say holy guacamole or something, you stupid kid. Get daddy to a toilet, he can't focus.
We have to do the obligatory R.I.P. Adam West thing in the title.
Yeah, exactly. Next one, episode 4, Adam West's tweets out of meth. Well, hey, Hearts, Lib, whatever you want us to call you. Hey, thank you for coming on. It's been fantastic having you on. Can you tell people where they can find you?
You can find me at Broke HRT Liberal, and then you can find my YouTube channel from there, pretty much. That's on Twitter. On Twitter is Broke HRT Liberal.
I was gonna say, is this like Instagram? What the hell is this?
No, not Instagram. Yeah, I have one. I just don't really use that one. But yeah.
You follow other people, huh?
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah. All right, and Druid.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook by searching whatever name you feel like. I'm probably there. You can find me on YouTube by, I don't know, following my comment on this video. I'll probably comment a letter like A.
I'll try to put your channel in the description. How about that? All right, guys. Tune in next week where we solve the problem of drugs by talking about Adam West's hardcore addiction to cocaine that definitely made him die.
Same Adam day, same West time.
This has been the Micro Extravaganza podcast. Signing off.
Why did we name it this?